Aloha! Welcome to Hawaii's Best. Here, you'll learn what to know before traveling as we discover Hawaiian culture, local businesses, and the experiences that make Hawaii one of the most incredible places in the world. And now, your host, Bryan Murphy.
Aloha and welcome to another episode of Hawaii's Best. And I am joined with one of my best buds, Andrew from Shaka Guide. What's going on, man?
Hey, how's it going, Bryan? Thanks so much for having me.
It's going good. I mean, we're staring down summer right now, and I know crowds are and have started picking up. What can you tell us a little bit being on island right now?
It's kind of an exciting time to be in Hawaii right now.
Yeah, you definitely see it, sense it, feel it. And also in regards to Shaka Guide apps, a lot more traction and a lot more people, discovering places for the first time. So that's kind of cool seeing around social media, people being out there and getting out there and traveling. We've done a ton of podcasts in the past, and today we're talking about Kauai overview, like a Kauai travel guide. But maybe for those who haven't tuned into the last couple episodes, so far we've done Oahu travel guide, Maui. Today we're doing Kauai, and give us a little overview of what Shaka Guide apps is all about.
Yeah, so just really quick, Shaka Guide is a GPS-based driving tour app for Hawaii. So instead of getting on a tour bus with, strangers, what you can do is actually drive in your own vehicle with your own family, having Shaka Guide app downloaded, hooked into your car stereo. It'll take you around the island and tell you stories and history, take you to some cool spots, and just kind of be your tour guide around the island. So it's just a lot of fun.
That's awesome. Yeah, we've used Shaka Guide a ton of times, and I've mentioned this before on the show, but I'm not the guy to get on the tour bus and do that. I'm more, kind of just want to go out and explore. When we talk about exploring the islands, and we're going to talk about Kauai today, but it's not just no holds bar. You don't just get to go out there and that looks like a cool spot, I'm going to stop there and go explore. Like there's a ton of opportunities to explore, but what Shaka Guide does so well is it gives us those areas that it is okay to go out and explore, not just to confine us to things, but because for the safety of, well, one, you and your family, but also of the land and the people that you are exploring around. Yeah,
definitely.
All right. Today, Kauai, also known as the Garden Isle, also known as heaven. We think about Kauai, like I mentioned, it's the Garden Island. It's the northernmost island. It's also known as the oldest island in the Hawaiian chain. And coincidentally, we are recording this on King Kamehameha Day. And this is kind of like the last stronghold.
That's right. Kamehameha never actually conquered Kauai. There's multiple failed attempts, but Kamehameha actually originally tried to conquer them. There was various stories of them getting sick and they were about to attack and the waves actually sunk the boats. There's a whole story that we talk about there, but eventually they signed a treaty, King Kamoli'i of Kauai and Kamehameha.
So zooming out a little bit, can you give us a brief overview of Kauai, the geography?
Yeah, so Kauai is on the northernmost tip of Hawaii. It's actually considered the oldest island. It has some of the most unique and amazing endangered species and ecosystem there. So it's a very beautifully protected natural environment. It's actually quite small. If you compare that to the other islands like Maui, or even, of course, Big Island is huge, and Oahu is very populated. Kauai is actually small, and it's also not as populated. So it really feels much more country, kind of out there. Next to Kauai, there's also another island called Niihau, which has a whole nother interesting story. But there are Hawaiians that live there. It's actually off limits to visit. And the people that live there speak native Hawaiian, which is, I think, very cool.
Yeah, that is cool. Niihau, you can see it as we get into kind of going over the different sides of the island. You can see it off on the west side of the island. Like I mentioned, the different sides of the island, the best way to break down, I think, any of the islands, and if you've listened to, Maui and Oahu, the overview podcast, the best way to break down the islands and explore is on the different regions. So we're going to dive into a few of those. The North Shore is where we're going to start. The resort towns you're probably familiar with if you've visited Kauai, of Princeville and Hanalei. So let's go ahead and let's start on the North Shore, and we'll just kind of work our way around the island, Andrew.
Cool. That sounds like a plan. So the North Shore of Kauai, man, where do I start? We most famously know about Princeville and Hanalei. Those are more of like the tourist districts, but there are also some great shopping in those areas as well, golf courses and whatnot in Princeville. One of the things I want to mention just right off the bat is there's a Kilauea Lighthouse. If you're going out to Princeville, there's a little town of Kilauea, and they've recently did a really cool remodel, shopping center and stuff like that. But if you continue to drive to the furthermost northern tip of the island, there is a lighthouse there. There's a small admission fee to go there, but it's a bird refuge. And so it's on these cliffs. There's these huge seabirds that dive bomb and fly all over the place. There's many different variety of birds that you can check out. They're kind of seasonal. Some of them are stay there year round. And those, they nest on the cliffs. And that lighthouse, there's a really cool story about how that lighthouse has evolved over years, of course, improving the technology of the lighthouse, but it's still in operation today. So it's kind of a cool viewpoint to check out, kind of check out the ocean, the beach, and then you can also see the birds as well.
So is this a lighthouse that you can actually kind of go to, or is it kind of off in the distance like the Makapu'u lighthouse?
You can actually go into it, inside of it, but you can't go to the top.
Right.
But you can actually go around it, go very close to it, take some cool pictures with it. It's just kind of cool to check it out. And then also the birds. So it's something to do if you're heading up to the North Shore. Let's just talk a little bit about Hanalei.
Yeah.
You can access it by car, like I said. And it's, first of all, it's this beautiful valley. If you see it from the above, there's a viewpoint from Princeville. You can see it's just acres and acres of taro fields. Taro is a really important staple for Hawaii. We use it for poi. We use it for food. It's think of it like a potato, similar to a potato or a sweet potato. It has a little bit of a different consistency. It tastes great with
everything,
with a nice, Koloa pork or whatnot. So the Kauai is famous for its taro. It actually supplies all of the islands with some great taro. In terms of Hanalei, it's a small little beachy town. It's a small walking town, but there's a lot of little shops and boutiques, some great little restaurants, kind of like roadside stands that you should check out. So it's kind of like a cool little beachy town. Check it out before you continue driving deeper into the North Shore.
Yeah, as you're driving around, it kind of resembles a little bit of, Haleiwa, North Shore of.
Yeah, exactly.
It has that feel, but it's a little bit more country, which, I always love.
Exactly. So another thing to be aware of is the North Shore of Kauai can get really big surf during the winter. So use caution if you're traveling out there during the winter. Yeah. Some popular beaches out there is Haena Beach Break with some epic surfing. There's also a little bit more of a protected reef called Tunnels Reef and Ani'i Beach. And those are some great snorkeling spots during the summer. I don't really recommend them during the winter.
Right.
A cool little beach that you should also check out is Moloa'a Beach. This is a small little residential road. It takes you, the parking is kind of limited, but that beach is actually where Gilligan's Island was filmed, I think, their first season.
I didn't know that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Cool.
So it's kind of a cool, check it out. It's a beautiful, beautiful beach. You can walk and check it out.
Well, probably like as we're up there and you see these amazing sea cliffs is the view of Napali Coast. And this is that area, and it's the North Shore of Kauai. And it's important to note that even though these sea cliffs are amazing, there's no way to get there by foot. Yeah.
That's right. So there is no continuous road around Kauai. You can only drive to, Waimea on the west side or the end of the road in the North Shore at Kaena Beach. And that's pretty much it. The road does not continue around. So you can get views from the Napali Coast at the end of the road on the North Shore. Now, just really quick, in order for you to go past Hanalei, you need a voucher reservation.
Gotcha.
The reason is that road gets really narrow and the parking is really limited at the end of the road at Haena. And just in the past, we had, people parking all over the place and just really impacting that environment in a negative way. So they've set up a reservation system. I recommend doing it in advance of your trip if possible. You go to gohaena.com. It's $5 for parking, and then there's also an option of a $15 shuttle, which includes entrance fee. So just do that if you plan to go to the North Shore. Otherwise, you really can't drive in yourself without a reservation. So just, keep that in mind in terms of planning and logistics if you're going to the North Shore.
Gotcha. And then the Napali Coast, the best way to view that obviously would be from a boat. And where do some of those boats kind of launch off of?
Yeah, so a lot of the boats actually launch out of Ani'i Beach, which is on the North Shore. So there's a ton of cool boating trips. If you're really brave, there's actually a kayaking option where you can kayak the Napali Coast. When you go to the end of the road at Kaena Beach, you actually can't see the Napali Coast unless you hike about 0.5 miles. It's called the Koloa Trail. It's a much longer 11-mile hike that I don't recommend for in a day unless you're really, really prepared. Right. But if you just want to do a casual hike, there is the Kilauea Trail. You can hike in. Trailhead starts from the parking lot. You hike in about 0.5 miles, and there's a beautiful view of the Napali Coast, some of those iconic views that I really recommend.
Awesome. Okay. So I think we got a lot of areas to cover on the North Shore. Okay. Going over to the east side, Coconut Coast, and probably one of the most, you come to Kauai, you're going to pass through Lihue, yeah? I mean, that's the airport. That's the main airport here.
Yeah, so of course we have Lihue. That's just the main town. It used to be a bunch of rice fields back in the day. There's some really cool stories about George Wilcox. He was one of the first foreign, business savvy people, and he actually set up quite a big operation of farming, mostly rice and taro and sugarcane. So they did actually quite well. This family still owns land there, and they're very philanthropic with that in helping the community and whatnot. Which, by the way, this is kind of a side note, and I forgot to mention this on the North Shore, but Mark Zuckerberg owns like a big chunk of the Kauai's North Shore. If you guys are Facebook users, I think he owns somewhere around 900 acres right now of the Kauai's North Shore. And this is semi-controversial, but really what he plans to do is not develop it. He's actually wanting to just hold it. And some would argue that as a good thing because it limits its further development. Yeah, so say hi to Mark if you're driving by.
Yeah, I was curious.
He has big walls.
Yeah, I bet. Yeah, that's funny because I was gonna bring it up, and I know I've read some of the news on where things are at, and yeah, you can do your own research on all that. But that is encouraging to hear at least that he's planning on to not develop it at this point in time.
Yeah. So, anyways, I know it's a politically sensitive.
We'll digress.
But anyways, I was talking about the Coconut Coast, basically the east side of the island. So we got Lihue. There's a few hotels there not too far off Lihue. This is also where the cruise boats park. So there's, shopping, there's restaurants, there's all that cool stuff that you'd kind of get in a touristy town. There's also some tours that pick up from there as well. Just outside of Lihue, not very far, there is a beautiful waterfall called the Wailua Falls. It's a double barrel waterfall, really cool, just little parking lot with some pictures. It's really a fun spot.
Yeah, that's incredible spot. And I think the one thing to know, just as we're going around the island a little bit, you'll probably notice that, especially if you've been to Waikiki, it's an urban, or Honolulu, it's an urban city. It's a little bit faster, but still probably not as fast as like in LA or whatever. But when you go to Kauai, it's really slow. You got to make sure that you prepare yourself, especially if you're coming from the mainland, and especially if you're on the West Coast or even, over in New York.
Yeah.
You really have to mentally prepare yourself to slow down because you have to move with the island or you're going to have a bummer time.
That is totally right. It's a different feel. The locals are really friendly. So, you go to restaurants like, hey, where are you from? And, I just love that. I love that type of environment. Of course, we as visitors also need to make sure that we respect their home, and by doing all we can to, pick up our trash and, minimize the impact where we can. But I love the town. It's actually where I went for my honeymoon. So
cool.
Special little memory for me. But looking at another big town just north of Lihue is Kapa'a. Kapa'a has become kind of a little bit of a Airbnb resort town in a way. There's a lot of like vacation rentals that you can find there in Kapa'a. Loads of cute restaurants, shave ice. What I like most about Kapa'a is there's this cool little bike path where you can rent a bike, and it actually goes for miles and miles, and it follows the beach. Nice open sidewalk. So I think that is one of my favorite things to do actually when I'm on the east side in Kapa'a. And just really quick, if you're going into the Wailua Valley, there is also another waterfall called Opeaka'a waterfall. You can just see it off the road. There's a parking lot. So that's kind of cool to check out. It also has a view of the Wailua River. The Wailua River is actually pretty unique in that you can actually ride boats on it and kayak on it. It's a pretty huge river. Just with the amount of rainfall that Hawaii gets, it funnels into the Wailua River. So there's also an option to take a boat tour to what's called the Fern Grotto. This is done by what's called the Smith Family Luau, and they have this Fern Grotto boat ride. It's kind of cool. It's definitely starting to see some wear and tear in terms of the ferns, and the natural flora fauna is having some impact. For some reason, the water isn't flowing as much as it used to there, but still kind of worth it if you want to check it out, a boat ride. If nothing else, it's kind of a fun boat ride. And one last thing before we move on is the Lidgate Beach Park. This is on the eastern coast. There is a cool wood-made children's playground. I mean, with swings, right? Most playgrounds don't have swings anymore. This playground has swings. It's all made of wood, and it's just cool little like slides. It's this beautiful park. If you have kids, go there. There's also a protected cove where you can swim. And so a Lidgate Beach Park is a fun like family stop, for a picnic or something.
Sometimes you just need the classic swing set, right? Like you travel around, like, okay, so we're like where we live around where there's a lot of parks, and you go to a park and it's like, what is that structure? It's like this octagon thing that you're supposed to like,
it's like,
climb
what the
around.
Heck? Where's the swing, man? Where's the swing? Yeah, exactly. So anyways, it's like an old school park, but a lot of fun.
Love that. Okay. Before we head to the South Shore, I want to talk a little bit about Shaka Guide. There's a lot of information to take in, and we'll have a blog post like we did with the other tours, travel guides. We'll have that link. But if you're on your smartphone, what are some of the tours that people can, expect, or would you recommend downloading coming to Kauai?
Sure. So basically, we break up Kauai in 4 sections, just like we are in this podcast. We have the North Shore tour. We have the east is actually what we call Wailua Valley and Waterfall Tour, and that basically is Kapa'a, Lihue, and into Wailua Valley. So that's the second tour. We also have a tour for the west side, which is actually we call the Waimea Canyon Tour, and that'll actually go into Kokee and whatnot, and we'll talk about that in a bit. And also the South Shore, which is Poipu and Koloa. So that's another tour that we have as well. So 4 tours, 4 kind of sides of the island.
Well, that's a good segue because we're going to talk about the South Shore now. And this is probably, if you have been to Kauai, you probably have stayed on the South Shore of the island, or like we just mentioned, the east side. So let's talk about Poipu, the resort town.
Yeah, so Poipu is on the further southernmost side of the island. So when the North Shore of Kauai is really, really big surf in the winter, the South Shore of Kauai is actually like beautifully calm ocean. Anyways, that being said, Poipu does have some major hotels there, golf courses. It has tons of little condos and bed and breakfasts and Airbnb type of situation there. They have some cool restaurants, shopping centers, the whole 9 yards in terms of just a cool place to chill. There are some nice beaches there that you can check out. Some are more of the rocky side. Some are more approachable. So let me talk really quick about the Poipu beaches. We have the Poipu beach, which is kind of the southernmost beach, big, nice, broad sand.
Walkable beach.
Spot. Yeah. So that's kind of like the go-to to kind of chill. You usually can see monk seals there if you're there at the right time. Another beach I really love, which is Shipwrecks Beach. It's the place to go for surfers and boogie boarders. So you can go check that out. There's also a little hike to a lookout point not too far from Shipwrecks where you can kind of get a cool view of the beach and Poipu. If you go check that out, that's also in our tour. Yeah, then there's just a variety of other beaches. Baby Beach is another.
Yeah.
One of the fun things to do there in Poipu is actually called Spouting Horn. This is a natural blowhole that, the lava, for whatever reason, has a crevice in the rock. And when the ocean is pushed in, it shoots water up, sometimes, 30 feet in the air. And I've been there just recently with my family, and we came at like the perfect time, and it was epic. Like there was seriously, it is a mega blowhole. If you're there when the waves aren't so big, it's kind of a wussy blowhole, but still cool nonetheless. So check out Spouting Horn there if you go to Poipu.
For sure. All right. Close to Poipu is Koloa.
Yeah, Koloa is a historic sugarcane plantation town. Long story about sugarcane and the impact on Poipu, but it's a cool walkable town. I think of it like the Wild Wild West type of town, where they have like the broad like wooden decks with all the restaurants lined up. It's really cool. There's some history there as well about the town that you can check out. Again, some cool little shops and, souvenirs and food. I like to walk around Koloa when I have a chance.
I love Koloa. Yeah. We had Koloa rum happens to be part of this sugar mill, and we had Koloa rum on the podcast. We didn't talk a lot about rum. We talked about, so if you're curious a little bit more about the history of Koloa, we talked with the president, Bob Gunter of Koloa rum, and he gave us a whole history lesson of this area. So I'd encourage you to go back and listen to that podcast. So that's the South Shore, and definitely would recommend not just hanging out there your entire time, even though there's, quite a bit to explore there on the west side. And this will be where we'll wrap up our Kauai travel guide. The west side of Kauai has some incredible views. So let's start, Andrew, with Waimea Town.
So going out to the west side, the doorway to Waimea Canyon and Kokei State Park is Waimea Town. There's a lot of cool history here about Captain Cook. Actually, there's a statue of Captain Cook in the town, and this is supposedly where he came on one of his voyages. Basically, the town of Waimea has a small town with a great place to grab a bite to eat, kind of on your return trip. So I recommend just driving straight past it. And then on the return trip, you can kind of stop in here for lunch or a late dinner. There's some great poke, Ishihara's, or Jojo's Shave Ice is some great go-to spots that I like to check out. But beyond that, it's really just kind of a passing through town as you're making your way up to the canyon. So there is a couple farms here on this side of the island. There's Kauai Shrimp. There's a shrimp farm. There's also Kauai Coffee, which they have acres and acres of coffee that are grown here. That we also kind of take people on a little segue on our tour to check out Kauai Coffee, free samples. It's kind of fun little detour to check out.
Yeah. Okay. So we're passing through Waimea Town, and then what's kind of the next spot? Where are we going?
So there is a little visitor center before you drive up to the state park that if it's open, I kind of recommend checking out that visitor center. There's some information, there's some maps, there's a restroom too if you need to. Because once you drive past Waimea Town, there's only one place to eat. And I think there's only one restroom. So just be aware of that. So, make sure you're good to go.
Yeah.
So as you're driving up, it's a very windy road up to the canyon. There's multiple viewpoints of what's called the Grand Canyon of the Pacific. So with these viewpoints, you can kind of slowly get a little bit of more of a view. And as you get closer, the view gets even more amazing. into Waimea Canyon, you need to be aware that they started actually charging for parking as well as entrance fee into this area of the national park, of the state park.
Right.
The reason is just impact. There's been a lot of visitors and they're looking to kind of improve the infrastructure and the education there. So just be aware that if you're going into Waimea Canyon, they do charge $5 per adult in your car. And they also charge $10 per vehicle parking as a parking fee. Kind of expensive. I mean, if you're going with a family, but at the same time, just remember that this helps them to, maintain and improve the environment there as much as possible. So anyways, going into Waimea Canyon, there is a couple of viewpoints to actually see the Grand Canyon of the Pacific. It's pretty epic. Definitely check it out. There's like a fruit stand in the parking lot sometimes if you're lucky.
I remember the first time and it happened to be pretty wet and misty when we went. And so just, be aware that any weather in any of the islands can change pretty quickly. So just be aware of that. But anyways, so if you've been to Grand Canyon, proper Grand Canyon, and you walk up to it, and I know we went with our little kids, and like your stomach just kind of drops and you hold them a little bit tighter. It's that same type of feeling, probably not as intense, but it's still pretty intense. And you got to kind of respect it as you're making your way to the viewpoints.
Yeah, no doubt. And the truth is you see the Waimea Canyon, but it's only the beginning, because as you continue to drive up the mountain, it just gets better and better. So what you can expect next as you continue to drive, let me back up here. If you would like to hike, there is a very cool waterfall hike called Canyon Trail to Waipo'o Waterfall. And this is a waterfall that you can actually see from the road without hiking it. It's very far away, but you can see this cool little waterfall kind of to the side of the, Waimea Canyon. You can see this little waterfall. Well, there is a cool hike. It's about 3 miles round trip. It's not the easiest. It's what I consider moderate. So be prepared for some, grabbing roots and climbing up rocks here and there. But you can actually walk to the top of the Waipo'o waterfalls and you get a beautiful view down. You can actually swim in small pools there. I did it with my family and enjoyed it very much. Just make sure to, pick up the trash, stay on the trail, and respect the area there. But it's definitely one of those epic hikes. I don't think I've ever been on such a cool waterfall hike.
That's awesome.
In Hawaii.
And the dirt is so red as you're driving. It's
yes,
it's incredible how red the dirt is on that ride.
Do you know why it's red?
Tell me why.
It's actually because there's iron calcite in the rock, because this was a volcanic eruption that formed these islands. And so the red is actually kind of like the island is rusting slowly because of this iron that's in the dirt. So it appears very red. Actually, it's very interesting. There's a company in Kauai that started a shirt company called Kauai Dirt Shirts. And what they do is they stain the shirt using the Kauai dirt. And so it becomes a very, very dark, deep red. So, of course, if you have white sneakers and you're hiking, forget about it. It stains.
But maybe you want that little souvenir. That's the one of the things you can take from the land is that dyed on your new, hiking shoes.
Yeah. So, but Kauai dirt is something known for being very red, but it's cool. As you're continuing to drive, you do get beautiful views of the Napali Coast at the end of the road. It's called the Kokee State Park. There's 2 views of the Napali Coast. Both are just as amazing. The problem is you can't control the weather. And so I've been there sometimes where blue skies, no clouds, and you're just oh, but then there's times where it's cloudy. And by the way, Kauai, this part of Kauai is one of the wettest places in the world. Okay. It gets more rainfall than most rainforests.
Yeah, that's crazy.
It's just the way the mountains are formed and the clouds get trapped there. Very, very wet. And so sometimes I go to this beautiful viewpoint waiting for that view and it's clouds. And you're I drove all the way out here and I can't see it. So sometimes just be patient. The clouds move quickly and sometimes you get lucky and it'll open up for a view. Other times you just out of luck. So
yeah. And it's not like if you go out one day, this can be a half day adventure. It doesn't have to be the full day. So if you go out maybe the first couple days into your vacation and it's not the right weather you're hoping for, maybe try it in a couple days and you'll be good to go.
I mean, yeah, you could always go another day. To drive it to the top from Waimea Town to the top, I think is like maybe hour and a half tops. So it's not too bad if you just want to buzz up another day and like check out the view, but you might check the weather, although it's unpredictable. And one last thing, at the end of the road there is a trail hike called the Pihea Trail. This is a little bit of a muddy hike, especially if it's wet, so be aware. But this actually is pretty level. It doesn't have a lot of climbs, but you can actually hike and get some different viewpoints of the Napali Coast on this Pihea Trail. So I think that's a fun little family-friendly hike, assuming it's not muddy, for you to check out if you have the chance.
So after taking all that information in, Andrew, who would you recommend Kauai to? Is it good for families, honeymoons, retirement moons, if that's a thing? What would you recommend Kauai for?
I personally like Kauai because it packs a punch with not a lot of driving. You go to Big Island, you got to really be committed to go places because, there's a couple hours to really get to some of those scenic places. But Kauai, it's like you can hit the top and the bottom of the island in the same day, you viewing different stuff. So I actually like Kauai because there's a lot there without a lot of driving. It's a slower kind of a smaller town community feel. So if you're not into shopping, I would recommend Kauai, and you're into more of the hiking and a little bit more adventure. Kauai is a lot of fun. But in terms of family, it's also family friendly, but at the same time, it's a great honeymoon spot where if you just want to get away, don't bug me, I would recommend for Kauai for a lot of things, but definitely for couples. I think it's a great couples trip because some of those hikes maybe not be appropriate for younger children. So of course you can, modify your travel itinerary if you are traveling with kids just to, maybe not do some of those more moderate to challenging hikes. There's still a lot to see out there. Beautiful beaches, beautiful green botanical gardens, and some awesome hikes. So I think Kauai actually has a little bit of everything for pretty much anyone. It just depends on how you want to customize that trip.
Yeah, I totally agree. And you ended it so well right there. But I got to ask, and everyone has asked, what's with all the chickens?
Well, we actually kind of make a joke about this in our tour. And so there's a long story, but there was a Hurricane Iniki that came in and devastated Kauai. And, according to legend, that there was a lot of chickens that got let loose during that time. And then they inbred with these like bigger native chickens. And they turn into like these Godzilla chickens and roosters. So part of the respecting the locals is respecting the chickens and roosters. My recommendation is bring earplugs with you. They will wake you up at 4 a.m. And sometimes that is not cool on your vacation, but you'll see chickens everywhere. Don't feed them, but there's no natural predator to them besides fast moving cars. So just speed up.
Yeah.
If you're driving. No, just kidding. They're everywhere in Kauai.
You got dinner. Chicken. So, what's crazy, I knew about the shipwreck and that whole history. I didn't realize that there was like this inbred of like a super chicken. That's incredible.
There are some native chickens, right? They're brought over from, the Polynesians like years ago. And supposedly, the legend goes that there was a lot of chickens let loose. And I mean, they're pretty big, meaty chickens.
They're healthy. Yeah.
I don't know how they eat so well, but the chickens are everywhere.
Awesome. Well, I think that's the perfect note to end on. So, Andrew, thank you so much again for coming on today.
Yeah, no problem. It's super cool to talk about Kauai. I love the island. Check out our app if you get a chance. It's called Kauai GPS Driving Tour on the App Store. We have 4 different tours for you to check out. A lot of fun. Basically, a local guide take you around the island. And thanks for having me. Appreciate it.
Absolutely. And next time you are on Kauai, be sure to tag both of us at Shaka Guide and at Hawaii's.best. We love to see your adventures on the island. And stay tuned, hit subscribe because we got a lot more info coming your way. And until next time, be well. Aloha.
Mahalo for listening to this episode of Hawaii's Best. To stay up to date on future episodes, please subscribe and visit us at hawaiisbesttravel.com.